They called it Operation Final Dawn, but the soldiers who lived through it would remember it as the Blood Eclipse. For Colonel Darius Hail, that name was more than history. It was a scar that never healed. He had seen too many wars, commanded fleets that no longer existed, and watched entire cities vanish into light. When peace finally came, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like surrender. He left it all behind, took his pension, and chose exile. A frozen world called Arcturus 7, an ice planet orbiting a dying star. Nothing lived there. That's exactly why he went. He built a small habitat under the permafrost. No soldiers, no orders, just silence. For years, that silence was his only companion. He hunted ice worms for food, repaired his old plasma rifle out of habit, and recorded weather data no one would ever read. Peaceful, empty, cold. But then, one night, the silence broke. A sound he hadn't heard in years shattered the quiet. The proximity alarm. At first, he thought it was a glitch. But the scanner didn't lie. 7 heat signatures. Moving through the storm. Alive. That was impossible. Nothing that large could survive the cold. Darius reached for his rifle. His soldier instincts kicked in like old ghosts coming back to life. He stared through the frost-covered window, eyes narrowing. Through the blizzard, shapes began to move. Massive, winged, scaled. At first, he thought his mind was playing tricks. But as the storm cleared for just a moment, he saw them. The Drather, the enemy. The dragons who had once tried to burn humanity from the stars. And at their front was a face he would never forget. Thyronx, fleet commander of the 7th Wing. The butcher of Kepler Station. The dragon who had killed his friends. Every muscle in his body locked in place. Old rage, buried deep, came roaring back. But the creature he saw outside was not the same monster he remembered. Thyronx was dying. Her wings torn. Her scales cracked with frost. Behind her, 6 more Drather collapsed in the snow, younglings and veterans alike, too weak to stand. Whatever brought them here had nearly destroyed them. Darius could end it right there. One pull of the trigger. No witnesses. No consequences. His finger hovered on the trigger. But something inside him hesitated. Something old. Something human. Through the storm, he heard the faint crackle of a translator. "We require shelter." It was Thyronx's voice. Faint, broken, desperate. He froze. Logic screamed no. They were killers. They didn't deserve mercy. But mercy was the one thing that had always made humans unpredictable. He looked again through the window, saw her eyes. Not filled with hatred, but with fear. And in that moment, Darius Hail did something no one could have imagined. He lowered his weapon, opened the airlock, and let the dragons in. As the storm howled outside, 7 dying enemies crossed the threshold. And a war hero's solitude came to an end. But mercy always comes with a price. And what happens next will change everything. Would you have opened that door? Comment below. Because this is only the beginning. The storm outside roared for hours. Inside, the sound of heavy breathing filled the room. 7 Drather alive, but barely. Their scales had lost their luster. Their mighty wings now looked like torn flags from a forgotten war. Darius worked in silence. He didn't know why he was helping them. Maybe he just didn't want to watch anyone else die. He stripped the insulation from his own quarters, wrapped it around the smallest of the creatures, a youngling, no older than a child. The creature shivered, eyes glowing faintly as warmth returned. He rerouted power from his living quarters, feeding every spare watt into the heating grid. His breath turned to fog as the temperature in his dome dropped to freezing. But he didn't stop. For 6 hours, he worked. A man possessed. A soldier fighting an invisible battle against death itself. When the storm finally eased, the Drather began to stir. And one by one, they opened their eyes. Thyronx was the last. Her breathing was shallow. Her gaze locked on him. Her voice came through the translator, weak and crackling. "Why do this for your enemies?" Darius looked at her for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Because you're not my enemies right now." The words hung in the air like a spark between 2 dying stars. For the first time, Thyronx looked uncertain. The commander who had once ordered the destruction of entire fleets couldn't find a response. She tried to rise, but pain forced her back down. Her tail scraped the metal floor. Her claws trembled. "Kepler Station," she whispered. Her voice faltered. "That battle, you were there." Darius froze. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Thyronx lowered her head. "I remember your ships. How they burned in silence. How your people fought. even when they had no chance. Her eyes dimmed. You should have left us outside. Darius turned away. I thought about it. Then he added quietly. But then I remembered something. He paused, his voice low and heavy. My second-in-command died, trying to save a Drather hatchling from the wreckage. He said, even enemies deserve a chance to live. The silence that followed was heavier than the storm outside. Thyronx closed her eyes. Your species is madness. You fight without logic. You forgive without reason. Darius almost smiled. Yeah, that's pretty much what won us the war. For the first time, she made a sound that wasn't a growl or command. It was faint, a low vibration, almost laughter. The sound startled him, because in that small, strange moment, something shifted between them. Not friendship, not trust, something simpler. Understanding. Hours passed. The younglings slept in a circle near the heating vents. The older Drather remained silent, watching the human move through the dim light. Then, Thyronx spoke again. There is something you should know. Her tone changed, from gratitude to warning. We were not fleeing war. We were fleeing extinction. Darius turned sharply. What do you mean? Her eyes glowed faintly. The Drather homeworld is gone. He stared at her, trying to process her words. Gone? How? Your species called it a ceasefire, she said bitterly. But for us, it was the end. Our stars were poisoned. Our hatcheries burned. The collective fell apart. We are the last of our kind. Her voice broke. The translator faltered, unable to hide the tremor of grief beneath the mechanical tone. Darius sat down, slowly. For 30 years, he had believed the Drather were rebuilding somewhere beyond the frontier, that their fleets still waited, hidden in the dark. But now he realized they were gone, extinct, and the ones lying in his shelter were all that remained of a civilization that had once ruled the stars. He whispered, I didn't know. Thyronx lowered her head. Few humans do. The silence that followed was fragile, a quiet truce made of exhaustion and shared loss. Then, without warning, the proximity alarm sounded again. Darius froze. He checked the scanner. A new signal. Small. Fast. Incoming. Not Drather, Thyronx hissed. Her instincts kicked in immediately. Terran patrol. They will detect us. Darius's stomach dropped. She was right. A Terran defense probe. If they found the Drather alive, it would trigger an immediate strike. The war might be over, but mercy had its limits. He shut off the lights, powered down the dome's beacon, and whispered to Thyronx, stay quiet. The probe passed overhead, its lights sweeping across the frozen plain. For 10 seconds, no one breathed. Then silence. It moved on. Darius exhaled slowly. Safe, he murmured. Thyronx looked at him, truly looked at him. For now, she said softly. But soon, the stars will find us. And when they do, your people will not show the same mercy. Darius met her gaze. Then we'll just have to give them something worth sparing. Her eyes narrowed. What could that possibly be? He replied, a reason to believe we're better than our past. And in that frozen shelter, surrounded by the ghosts of 2 dying species, a fragile hope began to form. But hope is dangerous, because sometimes it demands a price no one is ready to pay. The storm outside had finally passed, but inside, a new one was brewing. Darius sat by the power core, staring at the silent radar. The probe had moved on. For now, the Drather slept in uneasy clusters. Their breaths came in long, low growls that echoed softly through the dome. Only Thyronx remained awake, watching him. Neither spoke for a long time. There was nothing left to say. Finally, Darius broke the silence. So what now? Thyronx's voice came through the translator, soft but steady. We find another world. Somewhere hidden. We rebuild what little remains. He shook his head. You won't make it. Not in your condition. Not in this ship. Her eyes flickered. It is not a ship. It is a grave. But it carried us here. That is enough. Darius exhaled slowly. He had seen that kind of determination before, the kind that keeps soldiers walking long after the war has ended. He stood and looked out the frosted window. The wreck of the Drather transport lay half buried in snow, a twisted carcass of metal and wings. No way it would ever fly again. He turned back toward her. If your people find out you're alive, the Terran command will come for you. And if they come here. He didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. Thyronx lowered her head. You would protect us. Against your own kind. The question hit harder than he expected. Would he? Could he? He wanted to say no. That he had done enough. that this wasn't his fight. But deep down, he already knew the answer. He said quietly, "I'm tired of watching people die." Her gaze softened. For a moment, the ancient warrior and the broken soldier saw each other not as enemies, but as survivors. Then came the sound. A distant hum. Mechanical. Approaching. Darius froze. Engines. He ran to the console. The scanner flickered. 2 new signatures entering orbit. Terran. Recon vessels. Thyronx hissed, wings twitching weakly. "They will scan the surface." He turned toward her. "If they detect you, they'll call for a strike team." But it was enough for the soldier to notice. "Is there a problem?" Darius forced a tired smile. "Only problem out here is the cold. Scan all you want." He prayed the cold would hide the heat signatures as promised. The soldiers spread out, holding scanners. Each ping felt like a heartbeat pounding in his skull. Back in the dome, Thyronx stood in silence. Frost crept over her wings as she kept her body still, slowing her breath to near nothing. Even the younglings mimicked her stillness, their biothermal glow dimming to almost invisible. Minutes crawled by like hours. Finally, one of the soldiers turned to the other. Nothing. Probably a false alarm. They began to pack up their gear. Darius exhaled quietly. The younger soldier glanced back toward the dome. "You sure you're okay out here, sir? All alone on this ice cube?" Darius nodded. "Alone's easier than company." The soldier chuckled. "Yeah, I hear that. Stay warm, Colonel." And just like that, they were gone. When Darius returned to the dome, he found Thyronx waiting. Her body still trembling from the cold, but her eyes burned with something fierce. "You lied to your own kind," she said. He nodded. "Guess I did." "Why?" Darius looked at her for a long time before answering. "Because I've seen enough death to know that mercy is rarer than victory. And if I have to choose one, I'll choose mercy." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Thyronx said quietly, "You have saved us twice now. No Drather would have done the same." He smiled faintly. "That's why we won." But deep down, he knew something was coming. The probe, the soldiers, it was only a matter of time before command connected the dots. And when they did, they wouldn't stop until they found out why a Terran war hero was hiding a nest of dragons. The clock had started ticking, and Darius Hail had run out of places to hide. The days that followed were colder than ever. The sun barely rose above the frozen horizon, painting everything in shades of blue and silence. But inside the dome, something had changed. The Drather were no longer dying. They were rebuilding. And so was he. Darius worked beside them, welding metal, rerouting power lines, and sealing cracks in the structure. The dragons helped where they could, their massive claws delicate enough to shape steel, their bodies strong enough to lift what no human could. He had spent his life fighting them. Now he was teaching them how to survive. And strangely, it felt right. Thyronx observed him closely. Every action, every choice. To her, the human way was a mystery, reckless and emotional, yet undeniably effective. One morning, as they worked side by side, she spoke without looking up. "Your people, they fight as if war is art." Darius smirked faintly. "And yours fights as if war is religion." Her wings shifted slightly. "To us, battle is truth. Only through struggle can worth be proven." He paused. "And what did the war prove?" She looked at him then, her golden eyes dim with reflection. "It proved that truth without compassion leads to extinction." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the generator. Darius said softly, "Maybe that's something worth rebuilding." Thyronx tilted her head. "Rebuilding what?" "Everything," he said. "Maybe what's left of us can start over. Not as enemies, but as something new." She didn't answer, but her silence wasn't rejection. It was thought. As the days passed, the dome became more than a shelter. It became a home. The younglings began to recover, their scales regaining their natural glow. The elders repaired fragments of their technology, integrating it with human systems. For the first time since the war, Drather and human tech worked side by side, two enemies building something together. One night, as the winds howled outside, Darius found Thyronx standing near the airlock, staring out into the storm. Her reflection shimmered against the ice. "Something wrong?" he asked. She didn't turn. "There is something I have not told you." Her tone sent a chill through him. "Go on. When our ship fell, it was not an accident." Darius frowned. "What do you mean?" Her eyes glowed faintly. "There are survivors of the Drather fleet, scattered, hidden. Some believe peace is dishonor. They would rather die fighting than live in shame. Darius felt his stomach tighten. You think they'll come here? She nodded slowly. They will come for me. And when they do, they will kill you. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he chuckled softly. I've faced worse odds. Thyronx looked at him, her expression unreadable. You do not understand. They will see your mercy as corruption. They will see my survival as betrayal. Then we'll show them something different, he said firmly. Something better. Her gaze softened. You speak as if compassion can rewrite nature. He met her eyes. Maybe it can. For a moment, neither moved. The storm outside howled like a warning. Then the silence was broken by a distant sound. A pulse. A signal. Echoing through the dome's sensors. Incoming transmission. Darius rushed to the console. It wasn't human. Encrypted. Alien. Thyronx's claws dug into the floor. They found us. The screen flickered to life. A face appeared. A Drather male, scarred and furious, his scales black as obsidian. Thyronx of the seventh wing, the voice growled. You live? You hide among prey. Thyronx's chest rose slowly. I live because a human chose mercy. Mercy, the male spat. You have forgotten what we are. He leaned closer to the screen, eyes burning. You will return to us, or we will burn your shelter and all within it. Darius stepped forward. She's not going anywhere. The Drather on the screen turned his gaze toward him, sneering. A human? Do you think your compassion will save you, Terran? Darius didn't blink. It already has. The signal cut off. The silence that followed was suffocating. Thyronx turned to him. They will come. And when they do, there will be no mercy. Darius tightened his grip on the rifle slung across his shoulder. Then I guess I'll do what I've always done. She tilted her head. And what is that? Defend my home. For a long moment, they stood facing each other, soldier and dragon, enemies no longer separated by hate, but united by survival. Outside, the wind screamed across the ice. In the distance, faint red lights appeared in the sky. Drather ships. Descending. Thyronx lowered her head. This will be the end. Darius shook his head. No, this will be the beginning. And as he turned to prepare the defenses, the camera of fate began to roll once more. Only this time, it wasn't humanity versus dragons. It was mercy versus extinction. The final storm was coming. And before it was over, the galaxy would remember the name Darius Hail once more. The night sky above Arcturus 7 burned with streaks of red light. Drather ships descended through the storm, their engines screaming against the frozen winds. The final battle had found them. Inside the dome, Darius armed the perimeter systems. Old Terran tech held together by years of repair and stubbornness. Plasma turrets hummed to life. The air filled with the low thrum of power building. Thyronx watched him work. You cannot stop them, she said quietly. They will come in numbers. Darius didn't look up. Then I'll make sure they remember what happens when you corner a human. The younglings huddled together near the generator. The elders prepared what little remained of their defenses. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. As the first blast struck the ice outside, the dome shuddered. Snow and metal rained down from the ceiling. Darius grabbed his rifle. The door lights flashed red. They're here. The airlock exploded inward. A wall of heat and smoke filled the room. Through the haze, massive figures emerged, black-scaled Drather soldiers, their armor glowing with crimson energy. At their head stood the same warlord who had sent the transmission. He glared at Thyronx with pure hatred. You have shamed our kind. You kneel to pray. Thyronx's wings spread weakly, the motion filled with pain but not fear. I kneel to no one. I stand with those who chose life over pride. The warlord snarled. Then you will die with them. The battle that followed was chaos. Energy fire tore through the dome. Ice shattered. Metal screamed. Darius moved like a ghost, every motion precise, every shot deliberate. He fought not as a soldier of vengeance, but as a guardian of something fragile and new. Thyronx fought beside him, wounded but defiant. Her wings swept through the air, hurling two attackers aside with a single strike. For a moment, it felt like the wars of old, fire and fury in the cold of space. But this time, there was no hatred in Darius's heart, only resolve. When the last invader fell, the dome was nearly destroyed. Smoke hung thick in the air. The generators flickered weakly. Darius collapsed to his knees, exhausted. Thyronx moved toward him, her steps heavy. It is over, she said softly. He looked around at the ruins. No, it's just beginning. He could hear the distant rumble of another ship approaching. Bigger, heavier. Terran. Thyronx's eyes widened. Your people. Darius stood, blood on his face, voice steady. They must have tracked the fight. He moved to the console and sent a single transmission. One line. No encryption. This is Colonel Darius Hail. Stand down. I have survivors under my protection. Static filled the channel. Then, a familiar voice answered. Terran command. Colonel Hail, you're harboring enemy combatants. Explain yourself. He looked at Thyronx, then back at the console. They're not combatants. They're refugees. And if you fire on them, you'll have to fire on me too. There was silence on the line. Then a cold response. Colonel, that's treason. Darius smiled faintly. Maybe. But sometimes, treason is just another word for doing what's right. He cut the transmission. Outside, the Terran ship hovered above the storm. Its weapons powered up. The ground trembled. Thyronx stepped forward. Her voice low and calm. They will destroy us all. Darius shook his head. Not today. He reached for a control lever, an old emergency protocol designed to overload the power grid. If he triggered it, the dome's reactors would create a pulse strong enough to disable any ship within range. But it would also destroy everything inside. Thyronx saw the decision in his eyes. No, you will die. He looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. Then humanity won't die alone. She stared at him, realization dawning. You would sacrifice yourself for us? He nodded once. That's what we do best. Before he could pull the lever, Thyronx moved faster than thought. Her claws slammed down, breaking the control arm clean in half. He turned in shock. What are you doing? She stepped closer, lowering her head until her golden eyes met his. You gave us mercy. Now I give it back. Her wings spread wide, glowing faintly as her internal biothermal energy built to critical levels. Darius realized what she meant to do. Thyronx, don't. She smiled, a gesture strange and alien, yet unmistakably human in spirit. Let the stars remember this day, that even dragons can learn compassion. Before he could stop her, she launched herself through the open hatch, into the storm. A blinding flash filled the sky. The pulse hit the Terran ship, disabling its weapons, freezing it in midair. Then silence. The light faded, and where Thyronx had been, only falling snow remained. Darius fell to his knees. The younglings cried softly. The elders bowed their heads. She was gone. Outside, the Terran ship powered down. A voice crackled through the radio. Colonel Hail, we detected an explosion. Status. He swallowed hard. Hostiles neutralized. Stand by for survivors. All of them. There was a long pause. Then the voice softened. Understood, Colonel. The ship lifted away, disappearing into the clouds. Darius sat in silence, the cold biting through his armor. He looked toward the horizon, where faint dawn light broke through the storm. For the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt alive. He whispered, Rest easy, Commander. You taught us something the galaxy forgot. He looked at the young Drather gathered around him, the last of their kind. They'll remember. We all will. The camera of history would record many battles, many wars. But on that frozen world, for one brief and impossible moment, humanity and dragons shared the same heartbeat. And from that heartbeat, a new dawn was born. Would you have done what he did? Would you have chosen mercy, even if it cost you everything? Tell me in the comments below. Because this story isn't about heroes or monsters. It's about the choice that makes us human. And that was the story of Colonel Darius Hail, the man who gave shelter to his enemies. And in doing so, found something greater than victory. He found his humanity again. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what mercy really means, take a moment to hit that like button. It tells the algorithm, and me, that stories like this still matter. Would you have done what Darius did? Would you have opened that door? Or would you have let the past decide the future? Tell me your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more powerful humans or different stories about courage, compassion, and the impossible choices that make us who we are, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story goes even deeper. Until then, remember this. Being human isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing compassion, even when it doesn't make sense. Thank you for listening. Stay warm out there among the stars. And I'll see you in the next story.